saying that the president, from the beginning, identified housing as a major driver of the Nigerian economy. And he demonstrated it by first creating a housing ministry to stand alone. As you know, in the past, we used to have the Federal Ministry of Power, Works and Housing. Then it came to Works and Housing. And so when he came, he decided to remove it from Works and created a standalone ministry as Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. That clearly shows a president that has a clear vision for housing. And the president also demonstrated further by appointing a professional in the built environment in the person of Architect Ahmed Musa Dengiwa as the Honorable Minister for Housing. Secondly, the president also introduced the renewed hope housing agenda, which was to be driven by the Honorable Minister of Housing, Architect Ahmed Dengiwa. And to your question, what is the role of the FMBN? In terms of assessing how far, I would say so far so good. Now, first, that has opened a vista of opportunities, created situations where both the private sector and the public sector can work together to amplify the benefits that are derivable from the housing sector. Now, what is the role of the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria? As you know, the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria is the apex mortgage institution in Nigeria, created to pool resources together in terms of contributions for the from Nigerian workers, both in the public and private sectors, into the National Housing Fund. The idea is to give opportunities to Nigerians to contribute to a fund that will enable them to take a loan to own their houses. So what that does is that we have what we call a qualifying criteria. Every Nigerian contributes who is gainfully employed, either as a self-employed individual or in paid employment, is required by law to contribute 2.5% of his monthly income. Now, if you take a Nigerian who is earning 100,000 naira, 2.5% contribution would be 2,500. The law provides that if you contribute 2.5, which is 2,500 in this case, for 6 months, which is 15,000 naira, it gives you an opportunity to take a mortgage loan of between 5 million to 50 million, which you would pay back over a period of 30 years.
Okay, I mean, that contribution can actually give you opportunity to get a loan?
Yes, that's why I said the contribution is a qualifying criteria.
Okay.
It has no correlation with the amount of money you can borrow. Okay. What you can borrow as a mortgage loan depends on your income and the number of years you have in service. But that contribution is a qualifying criteria just for you to qualify to participate in the scheme. So you can imagine the opportunity that is there. You contribute 15,000, you have an opportunity to take a loan of between 10 to 50 million naira. Now, because of the central role of the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, when the president pronounced the agenda, the Renewed Hope Housing Agenda, as driven by the Honorable Minister, the ministry also identified the fact that government cannot do it alone. Housing investment is capital intensive, as we all know. And so there was the need to also bring the private sector. And one of the reasons I said it was very critical and strategic for the president to appoint an expert in the housing sector is that when the minister came on board, one of the first things he did was to establish 4 reform task teams and give them an agenda to produce a blueprint and a roadmap for the implementation of the Minister President's agenda. And these 4 task teams were: 1, Housing Institutions Reform Task Team, that was charged with the responsibility of reforming the housing institutions like the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, the Federal Housing Authority, etc. Second is the Building Materials Manufacturing Hub, which is also intended to create a building material manufacturing hub in each of the 6 geopolitical zones of the country. Then there was also the Land Reforms Task Team that was also to look at the obsolete laws, guiding and stifling housing transactions in Nigeria, to generally make recommendations on reforming the title documents with respect to land. And then the 4th is the National Social Housing Fund, which was also intended to create a fund where even individuals who are no income earners can have access, have shelter over their head.
Okay.
So now the role of the Federal Mortgage Bank is that the ministry signed an MOU between the Federal Ministry and a consortium of developers to build houses across the country.
Okay.
And the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria provided a bankable off-taker guarantee of 100 billion naira to enable this
100 billion.
100 billion naira,
Okay.
to enable these developers access funding for housing. And in any location where these houses are constructed, the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria also provides mortgage loans for the individual beneficiaries of those houses. So in addition to the bankable off-taker guarantee that were provided, we are also involved in direct funding for the delivery of houses under the Renewed Hope agenda. But the idea is that because the private sector is borrowing from the private sector, the rates are higher, and so we are exploring the opportunity of a cross-subsidy so that low and medium income earners, who are the targets of the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, can live in those communities by paying less.
Okay, by paying less. Our viewers, last week, most of you sent questions, for the Federal Mortgage Bank, and the MD CEO is seated here in the studio. So let's start getting your messages as they come in. Now, MD, I would like you to explain step by step, the major steps that the Federal Mortgage Bank has taken in the past 2 years to improve access, to affordable houses. And can you sort of elaborate on the structure and impact of your public-private partnership? Let's have a structure of how it works.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let me start with the second question, which is the structure of our public-private partnership. Now, we have this in a number of variants. The first one is where a private developer that has land can collaborate with the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, where we will provide construction financing for the houses to be built. And when the houses are constructed, we will again create mortgage loans for individual beneficiaries who are going to be off-takers of those houses. Now, as an institution, we had, I would say, a bitter experience where developers who had land in whatever location had approached the bank for funding of those houses without off-takers in mind ab initio. So we ended up with estates that were built in some locations that were not off-taking for the reason that they were not properly located and so on. And some of them, the off-takers...
Due diligence was not carried out.
Due diligence was carried out, but I think it's a matter of judgment. I mean, so I would not want to pass judgment on, but the point I'm making is that we then decided as an institution to say, before we finance any construction, we must know from day one the individuals for whom those houses have been built. So we created what we call the Cooperative Housing Development Loan Window, where Nigerian workers, for example, both in the public and private sector, can form cooperatives and design the kind of houses they want by themselves, cost those houses according to the income of their members, and then they approach the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria to take a loan to build the houses so that we can then finance mortgages for the individual members to borrow. The second variant that we have is what we call the Ministerial Pilot Housing Scheme, where we are partnering with the Federal Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. The ministry provides land, and then the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria provides construction financing. And again, when the houses are constructed, we will also provide mortgages for the individual beneficiaries. And then the third is what I explained earlier, where we are providing bankable off-taker guarantees to developers who are willing to build houses. And what we require from them is to tell us for whom those houses are being built. So you must enter into a partnership with a group of off-takers to say, we have these individuals working in ABC, and they are interested in buying the houses that we will build. We have worked together to design the houses, to cost the houses, and so when we build these houses, they will off-take. So we do what we call profiling of those off-takers, check their affordability and be sure that they are willing to take those houses, and then we finance construction. So those are variants of the PPP that we are doing.
Must there be civil servants or private people who can come in and get these houses?
Both.
Okay, both.
Both public civil servants and private sector employees in the private sector, and even self-employed individuals. Or your own as a self-employed Nigerian, you can declare a monthly income that you earn and decide on your own how much you think is 2.5% of that income, and contribute to the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria for 6 months, and it gives you an opportunity to apply for a mortgage loan to buy a house.